and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Texas flag, honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, great. Do we have any comments from the public? No. Yes. No? Okay. And we can move on. Are there any adjustments for relief?
I don't have any.
Okay. So has everybody had an opportunity to review the month of April? Do we want to go ahead and make a motion to approve the agenda from the minutes from last meeting?
So moved.
Do you want to do the consent agenda or do you want to do the whole, you want to walk through each one of these?
I want to do the consent agenda.
Okay, I move that we pass the consent agenda as stated.
I have some questions under the consent agenda.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask Maureen. Do you have any insights? When we have such a big credit, relative revenue to expense, is there any insight as to why that is so big?
Could be a number of factors, not expenses that were budgeted, possibly not for projects that may be coming later on in the year.
So there are possibly some things coming out that we haven't seen that expenses aren't running that much.
If you look up higher, you can see maybe those are under budget.
Okay.
Yeah, big one is the ditch project.
Which one?
The big one's the ditch project. It's under. I don't know. Ten on the agenda, or excuse me, 11.
Okay, I'll wait till we get there. And I just wanted to ask Jeannie too, looking through the tax data.
Mhm.
It looks like the appraised value of the properties in the district went up like 10%.
Get there, but yes, they all went up, but remember it's protest time and certifieds come out in July. And we'll see what the totals are gonna be after protesting.
July would
It's
be-
probably gonna drop.
July would be reflective of all the protests that go in and are ruled on and all that other kind of thing. So only when we get to July. what the
We'll
actual
know
is.
closer to what it is in July, yes.
Okay. I'm just curious too, it didn't really apply to our mud so much, but I saw some of these were like 16% increases.
That's
Is it-
Metro, I think.
Does that have to do?
That's
I'm
commercial.
sorry, those what?
That's Metro, right?
Is it commercial,
Yeah, it's
100% max?
That is
That's
commercial.
fine,
Okay,
yeah.
that's what that was. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay. Can we pass it?
I move that we pass it.
Approve the consent agenda? Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jack. I did not take roll. Let's go ahead and do that. Emily, Britt,
Here.
Paul Nelson,
Here.
Jack Munch,
Here.
Marta Genthan here. Brad is absent today. And let's move on to the regular agenda.
We didn't take the vote on the consent.
Vote?
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
we
sorry.
almost hit everybody, but we got.
We had a motion, we had a second, but we need to call vote.
Can we vote on the agenda, consent agenda?
Uh,
Aye. Okay. Let's go ahead and start with the number 9. The regular monthly SJRA and Woodlands Division Report from Chris.
Well, good afternoon. The report's in your packet. Nothing out of the ordinary, normal operation, no violations, but I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
I guess I had some questions on your infrastructure maintenance. When pumps and equipment go down, do we have backup? Do we reroute? Does that affect service at all? How is that taken care of?
That's to everything you just said. But it depends what goes down. We do have backups, or spares. Sometimes we use rental, sometimes we have to bypass certain processes, but generally at the end of the day, it does not impact overall service unless it's a line break and there's only one line and the houses are fed off that.
And there was one break in Alden Bridge and Clingstone. Do we have a cause for that?
That one was what we call overbelling. And so when they put the pipe together, they put one pipe too far into the other pipe and it stressed that one side of the pipe and then it ran a crack along the bottom. About 8 foot, I think it was.
Did that happen often or?
More often than we'd like it to. But
Twice.
Any other questions regarding?
I saw at the back of the packet, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, there's something in there, an article about the Conroe water crisis. Is that something you answer or what, anybody provide any detail into what that exactly is?
We put in local articles, that are happening around the Woodlands typically. My understanding of that is, Farm City Conroe's professional staff, engineering staff, over the last few years recommended certain infrastructure improvements to be had, and those things were not accomplished. So now they are out of and having to decide whether or not to do development moratoriums. They already have one on the north side of the city, and deciding whether or not to expand that across the entire city because they don't have water supply.
They have one option, take more surface water.
They haven't paid their bill.
They have the option, no. They pay the bill.
That's my understanding. They pay, sure.
I have a question on page 30. Did you get your question answered, Jack? Yes. I was looking at the groundwater usage and I appreciate this graph. It's really, but who are the remaining participants who are using the majority of the groundwater?
so GRP is made up of 149 different water systems, 80 participants in total. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Outside of these 5, the other 144 water systems make up the remaining participants. So I can give a list to Eric in case he wants to see it and pass along, but I don't know them all off the top of my head.
Okay. Are they
Neighborhoods and municipalities that joined the GRP way back when,
regulated in any sort of way?
just like you. Yeah. Home bites.
There are a number of investor-owned utilities, private water systems that serve communities, and they are regulated also.
I was noticing with the surface water, it's basically us in Conroe using it.
But all those others that you're talking about, they all pay a GRP fee. They're not taking surface water, but they're paying an equivalent fee to compensate those of us who are taking water.
The groundwater is good too.
It's not like they're
It's like
just
a-
pumping groundwater. They have a fee associated with it.
Yes, but
Not
still-
necessarily using it. Sorry, Mara.
they're not using it? They are using it.
They are not.
Some of the remaining participants are using, up here in the top graph, they are using surface water. Because, for example, Rayford Road that you see in the surface water, you don't see them in the top graph because their usage is too small.
Okay.
So not everybody, there's only 6 utilities that receive surface water out of the 149.
Does anybody monitor that usage or
They-
ask them to use surface water? Is it not available to them?
You need to get, the pipes don't go to them. So when the GRP was developed long ago, everybody that joined in was once you joined, that allows you to meet the mandate that was in place at the time. And the mandate said you must reduce your groundwater withdrawal by 25%.
30.
At 30 at the initial, that's right. So if you join a GRP, and this happened across the county, if you joined a GRP, what the GRP manager would do would be find maybe some bigger participants overconvert them to 50% or more. And as long as you were part of the GRP in that grouping, everybody in the GRP complied with the mandate. So not everybody got a drop of that water, but they complied with the mandate by joining the GRP.
Right.
Because it would be ridiculously expensive to run a spider web of lines to every single one of those 80 entities. That would be insanely expensive.
That's,
Is
thank
that
you.
fair? Is that-
Oh, very good.
One other graph that I saw that I had a question on. I don't think it was in your folder. No. No, I don't have any other questions. Does anyone else?
I would like to call attention to page 37. That's the Bear Branch Dam monthly maintenance report.
This is the one that they want to put the
Redo the concrete on.
concrete,
Yes, ma'am.
and that's still recommended.
Yes, and working with Eric to schedule a time for the consultant to come do a presentation free for the 5 minutes.
That's later in my
Anybody have any questions about the Bear Branch maintenance report? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bear Branch, so that was the Bear, how about the Research Forest Drive drainage improvements?
Number 10, the meeting invite survey went out. So I think on Bear Panther, that's I believe, right?
Meetings on Wednesday,
Yeah.
next Wednesday.
Yeah, it's coming up. So stakeholders will attend that and we'll get an update from the engineer.
And what are they meeting to discuss?
They should have done an analysis and come back with cost estimates, shouldn't they?
No, they did
Giving
that.
a
They did
proposal.
that the last meeting. This meeting, they were summarizing all of their findings into a memo that could be utilized to go off and find funding.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to number 11. Consider an act on the proposed change order for the Spring Creek Drop Structure Project. Eric?
Yes, last month we talked about the change order. There wasn't a agenda item to take action, so this is more just to effectively ratify that discussion that we had. Just to refresh your memories, and I think on page 38, you can find the actual change order document. Yes, so as you recall, the project was 218,400 bid, did well under the estimate. The change order was for, if you recall, when we went in to start construction, the ditch had significantly experienced more damage. And so this change order would be to address that damage, the extensive damage that it had, presumably from the storms. So the amount, and you're at 90% participant. So the amount of the overall change order is 256,300. Your share of that would be 230,670 dollars. And so I just need a motion to approve that change order.
And does this come out of our regular budget or?
Yeah, you have budget to cover it because the project came on under significantly.
I have a motion to
This
approve.
is last meeting, you had pictures, right?
Correct.
Yeah, you had pictures in there. showing
Exactly.
Damage, okay.
And they've started working.
Paul moved, you
Yeah.
moved to approve
To approve the change.
Change
the
order.
change, and Emily seconds it. Can I call a vote? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Move on to agenda number 12. Brian?
Yes, ma'am. The legislative session wraps up 2 weeks from yesterday. So we got a little less than 2 weeks to go. Still tracking a number of bills. summarized those in the report last week if you are interested in watching the video on those bills. God bless.
Thank you, Matt. Sorry.
Been a long session. There's been a lot of infighting among the Republican Party that's made the movement of legislation pretty difficult. So anticipate there'll be a fair number lower bills passed this session percentage wise than in previous sessions. Still to be determined as to whether there's a special session or not. We'll see if the governor, that's his sole discretion as to whether he calls a special session, and if he calls one, what the items are that are considered in the special session. So we'll stay engaged to the end. And of course, after the session's over, usually before your July meeting, we'll have a summary of bills that are of interest to our district clients that we'll provide to all of you.
Do we have anything of interest to our group? Yes, many? Okay. I did hear that they are considering revoking the EPA changes for PFAs. Have you heard that?
Well, that'd be at the federal level.
The EPA just did that today.
Oh, they did actually revoke it.
Well, they, not everything, but they took a lot of burden off and put out a reasonable time period to take care of those issues. That's what I read this morning, but it's not, I think, and of course, there was a lot of complaining from municipalities and districts that we didn't make this happen. The plastic companies did it. Now you want us to pay the
Yeah,
cost.
it's an unfunded mandate. I mean, it's just yet another federal
Right.
unfunded mandate. I
Well, I
mean,
think
there's good intentions because of course we don't want, forever chemicals in our water, but the timing and the cost being determined and at the federal level and pushed down for states and local governments to implement their sole cost is always a point of contention.
We're still okay. Just, we've already done that.
Well, we are okay. We are in compliance without trying. So that's great. Thanks to Foresight. Okay, Eric, are you ready for your general manager's report?
Sure. Couple things to go over. Did want to mention that we continue to move through the ditches throughout the woodlands to identify the condition of the ditches and the piping, et cetera, going in. So we hope to wrap that up this summer so that we can incorporate the findings into next year's budget, or at least a plan forward. Did want to remind everybody that we do have the All Nuts meeting June 10th, 5:30 across the street at the community center. And the focus of that meeting will be to hear from the engineering firm HDR on their condition-based assessment of the AC water lines. So that's coming up. As Ed was mentioning earlier, a Bear Bridge Dam project, we're looking to set up a meeting possibly in July if we can get it to with all the stakeholders. So we'll kind of have we're looking at possibly having kind of a 5 mud meeting, if you will. It's not an all mud meeting, but that way we can give a consistent messaging to all the stakeholder muds. And we'll look to possibly do something in July if we can get it set up. So that's more to come. And that would include bringing in Schnabel Engineering firm that made some of these recommendations that are kind of in question, or at least being contemplated right now. So we'll hear directly from them and go from there.
Okay.
Did want to give you an update on the GRP. There is an update in the trustee report in your packet. The trustee report on
That wasn't.
what's a little weird this month is it's on page 58 at the bottom starts the summary of the GRP. This is the summary of the last GRP meeting and the way that the meetings fell. The next GRP meeting actually fell yesterday. So this update here is from last month. Essentially, and you can read it, but there was a couple individuals that spoke out against one of the committee members.
Why? I mean, there's just pretty strong language in here saying attacked him.
Yeah, to discredit his presentation that he was about to make. It's very interesting that those two individuals went that aggressive. Don't agree.
What was the issue?
Aggressive verbally?
It was to, well, they said publicly that because he wasn't a hydrogeologist, essentially what he's about to say, you shouldn't take into consideration.
Does that have to do with subsidence?
No, his presentation was merely just showing how aquifer decline from static water level perspective, decline was affecting the well, his well, and the wells in his area. So it was factual data. He wasn't making any recommendations or inferences others, but would show the data and how the declining aquifer was affecting his wells.
Where's his well? Where's he located?
In across the freeway, Rayford, down that corridor, 88, 89, Scud, and a couple other districts that are down that corridor.
Legends Ranch and that
Yeah,
subdivision.
down to all the way
Several.
down to 99.
Yeah.
That in those communities.
What was their contention? That they challenged him just because he was an hydrologist? Did you challenge his results or his presentation or what?
And then ironically, they used his slides in the previous month. They made a separate presentation and used the slides that he used in this month's presentation.
That he was able to present.
He did. And he didn't make any recommendations. He was just merely showing how aquifer decline was affecting the wells in his area.
The general manager's not a hydrologist either.
This month, yesterday, Lone Star did it again and did the same thing and went on record to refute some of the information that was in his presentation. Which was interesting. Again, using his slides in their previous presentation. So,
And they voted to no taking more surface water. That's significant.
well, that was a comment that the general manager made. It was, she didn't indicate which Montgomery County muds chose not to. So it's unclear whether or not she was directing that comment towards Woodlands muds or not. No, she didn't say. I'm not aware of any muds that have said no, that were offered water necessarily.
The two people who challenged him, are they on the committee or are they just citizens that read public comments?
Last month, one was a citizen and one's the general manager for Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District.
Thank you.
There's also a few articles in the back there. Jack picked up on one of them earlier. There's a couple others. We like to, share different articles that are pertinent to either the immediate area or what other municipalities in the area are dealing with. So from time to time, we'll add things in that are in the news that aren't necessarily, within our perhaps our boundaries, so to speak, but certainly in our area.
These proposed dams are what? Waller Pond?
Yeah, that's the Spring Creek drainage project that has been under review or under analysis by an engineer for the last year or so. And that was the town hall meeting that just occurred, last week, a couple weeks ago.
Would that in the end ever affect our flow? Any of these?
It would have downstream effects throughout the Spring Creek drainage area for sure. Probably the most benefit would be the 386, but there was definitely some structural improvements or benefits along the route that would touch 7 and 60 for sure.
You reference a project in here, which is close to where we are, or at least part of 7, and that's the one between, on Research, just east of Cat's Cradle.
Okay,
Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I'm not sure.
I just was gonna ask you sort of what they're doing, because I've seen the equipment there and it's referenced in here.
Oh, some work on a drainage project?
Yeah, one of the residents apparently complained about something from what I read in here.
Okay, yeah, that's MUD 67.
67, which is just south of us.
Right. They're doing some improvements to that particular ditch. There's a pipe that was disintegrated, and then another pipe that was needed some adjustment at the surface, manhole issue. And then they're cleaning out the flow line of the ditch and regrading the banks of the ditch.
They don't have to do anything under the highway.
No, there's box culverts under the road there, and then there's possibly some work to do some more ditch clean out south of the road. We'll be seeing a lot of that, I think, over the next couple of years. That's part of what we'll bring back to you in the capital improvement plan. Some recommended improvements that are needed, not only to replace some disintegrating metal pipe, but also to regrade some ditches, clean out some silt, things like that. So that's an example. That particular district at budget setting time last year put in a little bit more than the other districts did. We put in, I think, an extra 25,000 for every single district to address at least one, maybe two disintegrating pipes. Because the previous years we were starting to see that when I came on board. So we started putting that in the budget. That particular district knew that they wanted to address that particular ditch, put in some extra money in the budget for that. So we're just not going forward with it.
Okay, thanks.
Would this be an appropriate time to discuss, I know at the trustee meeting, they had discussed the SFDUE data and that they were going to review that.
Not quite. That's the next agenda item.
We-
Before that, I'd like to kick it over to John for the communication report.
Great.
Hello. Page 51 is your communications report. We are exiting the second quarter of our strategic plan where we've had a heightened focus on water quality. In June, July, and August, we'll be pivoting towards water conservation. Summer, of course, being a good time for that. So you'll see that reflected in a lot of our marketing materials. Infrastructure renewal communications, our community working group met for the fourth time on May 13th at wastewater treatment facility number 1. They had a great tour there, lots of really good information. They're very impressed by the staff there. Then afterwards, Eric provided just a high-level introduction to the 4 alternatives for that facility going forward. They're going to meet again on July 1. And Corolla will be there and will present a summary of their assessment to date. So they're digging into that project a little bit deeper now. And as a reminder, that is that conduit to the community. So representatives from a number of different organizations, including my directors, that are sharing information to and from the community to inform the campaign. We are getting more graphic. We've been trying to get more video and more imagery into our communications for some time, and we're stepping that up even more. We've got 2 videos in process. One is going to be, these are 2 to 3 minute videos one will be on kind of who we are, putting a face to the agency. The other one is telling the story of our water supply, source to tap. And we'll be able to utilize these on our webpage, social media, presentations, and so forth. So that's coming. And then also excited to announce that we just got a little extra help. We put on a part-time social media specialist really to help us develop more content to make our stuff even more engaging and really focusing on video reels and more visual content. You should see some nice improvements going forward here. Some current examples of our materials here in the next couple pages, and then our outreach calendar on page 54. It does say I'm going to be at the farmers market this Saturday. I will not be, but I'll be out there, trying to make that a monthly presence there. And with that, any questions?
Just looking at page 55, is that you who created the graph on 55?
Not do that.
Oh, okay. Not sure.
Thank you.
That is monthly consumption.
I wanted to put a plug in up before we get to that question, but again, the smart meter and the notifications, I said, don't have an irrigation system. I do call a hose dragger. I have two hoses and at the end of one of them is a nozzle. It's all airtight, watertight. But I left the water on, pressurizing. So, the next day I got a notice that I was 50% over my average usage. And that can't be because I hadn't watered anything. So I went and tracked it out to the backyard, and where the two are together, it had come apart a little bit. It was blowing a little hole in the ground. So just that much water told me to go look. So I think it's a great app for that, just to watch and let you know when things go wrong. Now, the chart, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just looking at this chart on 55 and 56. Well, more 55. It shows estimated district indoor usage, and then the commercial usage, and then the resident total, and our usage is on the rise. Sprinklers. People are sprinkling more.
Usually start coming on this time of year.
I think it's, yeah,
I
just
think it's seasonal. If you look at it.
the weather change, because that's really what that says, is that indoor usage pretty much constant. You can't do much more than that anymore. And so that other is outdoor stuff.
I mean, if you look at the two previous Aprils, it's pretty close.
Okay, thank you. Move on to the next thing on the agenda, which is the trustees report.
No, the item number 14, the other item you
Oh, the SFD, MUD SFDUE.
which is associated with the trustee meeting.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah, so at the last, or the regular trustee meeting, well, no, I guess it was at the special trustee meeting on the 22nd. The trustees requested that this item be put on all the MUD's agendas to consider doing an evaluation just to double check basically the SFDU calculations that were being used in the West Shore Trim Plan houses. And so this item would be to authorize WWA to do those evaluations and then come back to the trustees with that information. In order to do that, we've actually developed, and this was already ongoing, a tool in our GIS software to be able to do that very thing, to recreate the 6 and final accounting that was done years ago. Basically identifies each parcel in all the districts. And then what we would do is go in and confirm the the land use of those parcels, and then also look at the land use of the projected undeveloped properties within the service area as well. And that would ultimately help us determine what the SFDU count is, and then bring it back to the trustees.
Can you define SFD, what you're talking about?
Single family dwelling unit equivalent.
Thank you.
Basically, well, that's the acronym. Basically, what that means is because every land use uses a different amount of water and sewer, there needs to be a quantifier, if you will, to equalize each of those other land uses back to what a typical single family would be. So typical single family connection would be a certain number. And then whether it was a strip set, a restaurant or a flower shop or whatever it is, industrial, each of those would have different multipliers to bring it back to a single family unit. Does that make sense?
I think so.
It's kind of a unit of measure, if you will.
Can you go back and explain, okay, now that you explained that to me, can you go back and explain what it is you want to do?
To verify, so several years ago, there was analysis done, well, I guess we can go back to the 6 and final, but The sixth and final analysis basically did just that. And it looked at all the parcels in the Woodlands and identified what each MUD needed, what they would need to get to full development in 2027. That was the outlook at that point. And through the all MUDs on April 1st, some of that was being questioned. Well, is it really 7 MGD that we're running after as far as the sizing of the plant? And that kind of boils back down. When you break it down, you kind of got to break that back down to connections, because that's the basis.
Basically trying to figure out what the capacity, potential maximum capacity is for each MUD.
Correct.
And that's your unit of measurement.
Correct. And then that will be utilized to, again, Corello's using the number that Friesen Nichols built several years ago, which they've done this analysis before to kind of crystal ball what the overall need demand would be. And that came up with 7 MGD plant. And so the question is that really the number or not? And so
And you're asking us to authorize something?
authorize us to begin that work.
That would be you, WWA.
Correct.
And that's an audit process, correct? You're auditing the data,
Basically.
the GIS.
Basically, yeah, we've built the GIS tool that would allow us to look at each parcel and look at all the properties. And then we'll kind of do a validation or an audit of those properties to see, what's there, what was allotted, how does it relate to the 6 and 5 to the best of our abilities.
And when do you anticipate the audit would be completed?
Ideally, we're going to try to shoot to get it done in the next 2 months.
So it's, who will actually be doing this?
Kim
And you,
and I, yes.
that's it?
We'll probably need some help from our GIS consultant. They'll definitely be in the mix.
But no board members.
But that's certainly up to the trustees, I presume, but ultimately, no. There was a comment a comment from one of the trustees of creating a committee to help do this. And I don't know if that's necessary. I'm certainly going to bring all the data back. If we need to dig into how we verified the data, I can certainly share that with folks.
In the past, have board members been a part of
No,
that
I think-
process?
I've heard some board members be really adamant that what we've done so far is wrong. So I think that's a bad start. I think that we should back ourselves off of that.
Yeah, we'll be bringing all the directors back into the mix.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to us where it should be, but I don't know that, I don't feel we should have anybody with input, pro or con. That it should be the agency and their experts, and you present it, and then we, make our comments and see what happens.
And no financial component to this that we're authorizing. We're just authorizing you to go ahead and do
Our
it.
time to do it.
I move to authorize
Can I have a second?
to be able to do this.
Lee seconds it. Take a vote on that?
Aye.
Aye. All in favor?
And if I have privilege, I don't even know how long we've been doing this, but I mean, the final, and we talked about the plant being old about 5 years ago. So it's now 5 years older. And I think we've done 4 or 5 studies at a cost of millions. And I just hope that we can reach a point with this, that we have enough data to make a decision. And not have another study, because I said it's over and over and over. And I just think we need to be careful about how far we extend that. Because at some point, I think we need to either rebuild a plant or get real serious about Band-Aids. That's all I got.
Well, I think this is a great project because it's going to bring some facts to light.
Try to
And,
do, refine that. I
There
think
were
that's
some
good.
issues with the accuracy of the past numbers, correct?
I wouldn't say there are issues. I would say there was questions.
Question.
There's no confirmed issues.
I knew you were gonna say that.
necessarily. Did you? Oh, I don't know. I mean, that's why we're doing it. I mean,
Right, we just double
Yeah,
checking
my-
your numbers.
you might confirm the numbers are exactly the same. I have no idea.
So is,
I'm not going into it with any.
is Ken gonna be a part of this, or is he working on some other facet? Ken Meggert from the trustees?
He's expressed interest in getting involved, but there's been no movement towards that.
I think one of the things I didn't, I guess, about the Woodlands that I assume that every piece of property they own has been platted for a long time for its intended use. I mean, I haven't seen a project. I was looking at the Riva one. That was platted the third year that they came here. And I assume they're unrestricted reserves or commercial reserves, which means it can be anything. In this case, it's gonna be 266 apartments. The one on Riva,
Mhm.
on the Riverwalk, 266 apartments plus a retail and stuff like that. And I didn't know anything about the ones across the street from Whole Foods. Almost 180 units that. What's scary about that is what I read about it was that the developer says that they've already sold $250 million worth of homes. So do the math, it's like 160 homes available. That's the Ritz-Carlton. Those are for sale, the others, the apartments. But my point is they're usually platted and we think they're parks and they're open fields. I walked by that open field across from Whole Foods 100 times. And I always thought, that's a pretty neat bird reserve. And now it's
Just different bird.
anyway, I appreciate that it's being done again. I said, I just hope we can come to a conclusion.
So does this study that you're doing or this update affect our decision-making process down the line? How will it affect the agenda that we set out months ago? You know, that we were going to, in May, we had a meeting, June, we were supposed to have a meeting, in July. We canceled the May one. So where is that discussion going to take place?
Well, I think the analysis that's being done by Crow is on hold until this analysis can be completed. So as soon as we can get that verified, send that back out to the directors, then I think we can hopefully get rolling again and get that evaluation complete.
So we really don't need to express our desire to hold the agenda on that decision. Hold the decision on what we're going to do with the treatment plant. We were going to make a decision after all the meetings, correct? That's where we were going.
I mean, at some point, the MUDs need to make a decision
Correct.
for sure, once they have the information that they need to make the decisions. And this was just a question that had come up pretty uniformly across the MUDs. That's why there was kind of a hold on the evaluation,
Okay.
so that we could do this.
If I could, I'll promise I'll be quiet now, but the other issue that kind of comes up from time to time is the 4Q or the rules that the state have about what the plant should be able to do under stressful conditions, rain and all that. And I don't know if we've talked about, is that also settled, that there has to be a certain amount of capacity, treatment capacity to handle those flows, or that's still?
And that's gonna be ruled on by the TCEQ, but there's a number of folks in the room here that have experience with that.
Yeah, I was looking at them.
And the state doesn't look the other way usually.
Anyway, I just think that's one of the things that needs to be considered when we look at the volume, that what we build is to meet EPA and state of Texas MPDS requirements, that we stay within those boundaries and not have it flood every time we go over the walls. And so that's a part that I assume would be looked at by of the consultants too.
The April the April 22nd board meeting was like 3 hours long. And they went through a lot of, for number one, they just stopped at number one, but some ideas of how they can have that storage.
Yeah,
What that
I
would look
remember they
like.
talked about storage and there's all kind of ways to do it. And I don't know any of them. But I'm just saying that that's another thing is we can size it to take all the development we think is going to happen, but we still have the issue of making sure that we have a system that's tight and then that if there are overflows and stuff, that the plant can handle it in accordance with the state laws and
Well, I truly felt that the presentation at the trustee meeting was very clarifying for me in
Yeah.
terms of the issues and what we needed to do.
thorough
We were
for
gonna
sure,
keep it.
yeah.
And so I really appreciated that presentation. Okay, do we need to vote on anything right now?
You already did.
We're done with that. All right. Do we need to recess?
Do not.
Okay. Any other items for future agenda that we might need? Ideas?
I just wanted to mention to you, I may miss one or two in the near future.
Okay,
But it's on.
so in June, we'll have two people out, Paul and. Okay.
Easy to outvote us,
You're looking at it.
whoever we are.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we can call this meeting to close.
So we took the meeting in half when Brad's not here.
Yes.